Hello and welcome to Watson Premier League Match Day 16, Manchester Derby this weekend. Probably the worst derby in a long time because Man City keep losing. Also in the Champions League, and Man United is no surprise, Tom, but these two teams cannot win.
No great surprise. I mean, we'll get to it, but I'm still now, before we get to it, trying to work out what I'm going to do, because I try and look at the form of both teams and think, I'll go for the form team at least, or some good metric they're achieving. They're achieving nothing. So we'll work it out as the show goes on.
Okay, let's try to find good odds. Of course, we have still Liverpool on top, but Chelsea is only 4 points away from Liverpool. Of course, one game in hand. So, guys, stay with us. Let's listen to Tom's tips. And don't forget to press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. Okay, just to clarify, it's Tom, not Tim. And now let's start with the tips. Tom, we have Arsenal-Everton. It's the first game we have to analyze. Everton, as we all know, the Merseyside derby was postponed due to the weather, and they had a great win in the last game they played against Wolverhampton. So it's 5 points distance with the bottom three, but be careful. Next rivals, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City. For Everton, so this one is, I guess, Tom, almost a no-brainer going for Arsenal. They are very strong when they are playing at home, as they showed also in the Champions League.
Yes, John, I think you're right. Listen, Arsenal are still a very, very good team. And I feel like we've all been, for fun, caught up in the narrative of they're the new Stoke City. Great line from 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏, and their effectiveness from corners is incredibly, incredibly impressive, scoring corners against Fulham, Man United and West Ham in their last 3 games. They are the top scorers from set pieces in the Premier League across the last 18 months. They score from a lot of corners, but also free kicks and dead ball situations. They plan it out well and execute well, and that's really, really important. I do think they have struggled a bit from open play in the last couple of games. It's worth noting that didn't score against Fulham from open play, that the one they did score was disallowed. Against West Ham, though they scored 5, it was 2 penalties, 2 corners, and another from open play. So, you know, it's something to think about, if not to be worried about. And I think that is something that Arsenal will be concerned about at the moment. I think Bukayo Saka again in midweek proved what a world-class talent he is in the Champions League. I think the link-up play between 𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Saka is what sets Arsenal apart. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 coming back has clearly improved Arsenal, but I do think there needs to be a little bit more from open play from that pairing. And still, I think, who's going to be up front? What's the rotation of Trossard and Havertz and whomever else, 𝗵𝗵𝐴𝐽𝑒sus? What is that group going to be for Arsenal when they hit the home run? Back end of this season, March onwards, when they've got their best 11 and they can play it and play it and play it and play it. What's that formation going to be? What's that group going to be? That still needs to be worked out. And in this particular game, it's worth noting Declan Rice is suspended as well, which means the midfield gets a rejig again. Jorginho, Partey, and another. Maybe Havertz dropping deep. That changes the front group again. That's going to be an interesting conversation going into this one. In terms of Everton, a 4-0 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers was more than welcome. It was desperately needed. A first win in 5. There'd been 2 defeats and 2 draws in the run before that. And look, I think their record this season is quite poor, frankly. 21 goals conceded, just 14 goals scored, 3 victories, 6 defeats. They've struggled away from home. They've struggled defensively. They've struggled offensively. Before the game against Wolves, they'd stopped scoring set pieces. So massive concerns about Everton going into this one. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is not in form. Beto, who comes in to replace him, is not in great form. They can't quite work out the midfield lineup. Some weeks it's Mangala, some weeks it's Garner. And I think there's a doubt about Michael Keane here, which some Everton fans might say is a good thing. But I think the form of Jarrad Branthwaite has been quite concerning as well, considering he is probably their best centre-half in terms of ability. But last few games, he hasn't been particularly good. So I think you've got to go Arsenal win here, obviously. I think you'd be a very brave man to pick Everton, so take that up and down as your first bet. Second bet, I'd look Arsenal winning without conceding across the season at home. They've been really, really good defensively. 6 goals conceded in 7 games. That is one of your best, if not the best, home record in terms of defence in the Premier League this season. For Everton, away from home, they've only scored 5, under a goal per game. They're not going to score here, and so Arsenal win to 0. Maybe the handicap market as well. I found minus 2.5 at 2.88. It's not amazing. I'd rather go with a bet I think is going to come in like the first two, and then something crazy, which I'm about to mention next. But that's your kind of middle of the road, nearest the double money I can find you. Gabriel, if fit, looks fit to score from a header. Is 7. They keep scoring from corners, so the header market better than the corner market. And in terms of corners, it came in last week, so we'll go again. These two teams love corners. 14 or more corners in this match is 3.75.
All right. Well, this is almost a safe bet going for Arsenal. Also low odds, of course, for Liverpool. Playing at home against Fulham. They keep winning and winning also in the Champions League, in this case against Girona, also with Mohamed Salah in the score sheet. But before the Merseyside derby, they couldn't beat Newcastle. As I said at the beginning, is 4 points away from Chelsea, massive favorites. But as we know, Fulham can be dangerous, and they were able to draw with Arsenal. Is only 1 defeat in the last 5 games. So I guess Fulham is tougher opposition than Everton for Arsenal.
Oh, definitely. This season is going to be really interesting under the top 4. I still think the top 4 is pretty set. I'd still put Man City in that group. I think there's a 4-team title race on. But everything under that is really, really open. There is every chance Fulham could finish 5th. Every chance. And that's Europa League football. That group is wide open. I'd put everyone down to even West Ham in 15th. 14th into that group. 15th and below, I'd probably dismiss as relegation battle, but there's a great chance that any of those teams can go on a run and find their way into European football next season. So Fulham been very impressive. Before we do them, let's mention how good Liverpool have been. Another impressive win, as you mentioned, in midweek in the Champions League, 11 victories in 14, 29 victories in all. Look, I think the Newcastle game was one of those things that is going to happen to the teams at the top. They are not a perfect team, Liverpool. There are obviously faults there. And when you lose a couple of players, Konaté and Conor Bradley, and you bring in 𝐬𝐭𝐴𝐺 and 𝐬𝐭𝐚𝐲, the drop-off is quite significant. I'm not trying to be critical here, but the back line at best is really good. The second string for Liverpool is not amazing. If they lost Salah, they would not be champions. If they lost Gravenberch, they will not be champions. If they lost Van Dijk, they will not be champions. It's as simple as that. So got to keep that group fit, and losing the back line. There were errors there, and of course, Alisson missing. Kelleher's a very good goalkeeper, but he's not as good as Alisson. It's why Alisson is the number 1. That third goal that goes in last minute, the 𝐶𝐶 ball is dropping in, he scores. Would Alisson make that mistake? I don't know. We don't know, but we do know there's a number 1 and there's a number 2 for a reason. So Alisson being back, likely playing in this game. We'll see how it goes, but that'll make a big difference for Liverpool here. And their home form is obviously outstanding as well. I mean, to dwell on it too much would be a mistake. It's obvious Liverpool are good at home, but second best home team in the league. Just that anomalous loss against Forest. 13 goals scored, just 3 conceded, 6 victories. Very, very strong. In terms of Fulham, I think their away form has let them down a little bit this season compared to how brilliant their home form has been. Look, it's not too bad. 2 victories, 3 draws. But there's games where they could have got more. They should have got more and didn't. I'm thinking about when they have struggled against Tottenham Hotspur. Probably should have won that game, but they got a red card and it sort of fell apart for them. Thinking about 1 or 2 others this season where I think, they've been really good here, Fulham, but weren't able to go on to win the game or get the points maybe their performance deserved. But 𝐬𝐿 fantastic form. Raúl Jiménez struggled for goals a little bit recent weeks, but looks in good nick. Defensively, Anderson and another. Usually 𝗵𝐵𝐴 is good. Anthony Robinson is the best left back of 1995. Gets up and down and does his job well. Loads of praise for Fulham. Plus, they rotate the midfield well as well. You know, we thought the loss of Paulinho in the summer would be massive. And look, it is a big loss. But some weeks it's 𝐿𝐿, and some weeks it's Harrison Reed, and some weeks Pereira slightly deeper, and they're getting something out of Tom Cairney when he's not suspended. So, loads of positives about Fulham. Every chance they're able to get something here. In this game, 𝗵𝐵𝐴 suspended, Cairney suspended. There are some doubts about Anderson. That's a slight concern for Fulham because the first choice centre-half pairing might be missing. That leaves you with relying on Issa Diop at Anfield. I think that potentially is a swinger. Take Liverpool win at 1.29. I don't think it's going to be a throttling in terms of like 4-0 at half time. So I do like the group bets here of 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. That brings you at 3. That's double your money. If you do think it is going to be a battering, those goals are going to come late. So look at maybe Liverpool win both halves, or maybe draw at half time, Liverpool win second half. The over market, best bet really, over 3.5 goals is 2.63. I think Liverpool pull away as this game goes on. And of course, as ever with Liverpool, Salah scores, Liverpool win. Do it every week.
Well, Fulham, they don't score a lot. Away, actually, is 8 goals scored, 7 conceded. So usually is when they play away, it's kind of low scoring games. As you say, they are ninth in the away standings, 2 wins, 3 draws, 2 defeats, with Salah, top scorer of this competition, together with Erling Haaland, 13 goals. Also, big favorites, Newcastle playing at home, probably 2 favorites, only 1.3. Newcastle, Leicester City is the next game. Great week for the Foxes, grabbing a draw against Brighton for losing position, beating West Ham United, so now 5 points away from Ipswich. And next game is Wolverhampton Wanderers. Newcastle thrashed by Brentford. Always Brentford thrashing teams when they're playing at home. Is no wins for them in the last 4 games, Tom.
Yeah, there are some concerns about Newcastle. I think the issue is that nothing has really changed for a long time. And, you know, you can't stand still in football. You can't stand still in squad building. And they've got a world-class striker in Alexander Isak, but they're still trying to make a way for it to work for him for 90 minutes, the midfield. I mean, Tonali, I don't think Tonali's going to cut it in England. I mean, he's a very good player and all that, but some players don't suit some leagues. And I think Tonali in England is not going to be a good fit. Plus, what's happened to him personally, you know, if it were me, something like that happened, I'd probably want to go home as well and be comfortable and, you know, all that. So I wonder about the midfield makeup with Newcastle moving forward. Is this the summer they cash in on Bruno Guimaraes and have to rebuild again? Plus, defensively, still, you know, Sven Botman's been missing for such a long time. They're talking about next month. You do need that because whomever they played next to Fabian Schär, be it Byrne, be it Kelly, they're not to the standard required for Newcastle to press on. So there's been some concerns there. Plus, you know, sometimes you just get a feeling of meh when you're supporting a football team. And I think that's where Newcastle are now. They need a jolt of excitement if they're going to try and do something kind of second half of this season. I think that with Leicester City under Ruud van Nistelrooy, look, let's not be like too complimentary, right, about the 2 games he's been in charge. West Ham should have won that game like 10-0. Like that was a lot about West Ham's deficiencies than it was about the quality of Leicester City's performance to win that game. They were pretty atrocious. And in the game against Brighton and Hove Albion, they get a point from sort of nothing. They were 2-0 down with not like a long to go in that game. But like, I don't really see this squad staying up. I don't really change my opinion on that. I think defensively, all the players they play at centre-half are poor, from @𝗏𝗏𝗏 to Vestergaard to everybody. The midfield, look, I have time for Samarian and Ndidi, but it's very one-paced, and they're still relying on Jamie Vardy, Jordan Ayew, Premier League veterans to score goals. I struggle with it. I really do struggle with it. I think that this is the new manager bounce. We're actually seeing someone have a new manager bounce for the first time in years. But I don't see how long it's going to last. Hopefully for them, it lasts through this and the Wolves game you mentioned, because there will be a drop-off at some point. I don't think that will happen here. So I'd go Newcastle win first and foremost. I think they are going to win this game. I think they're going to struggle, Leicester, in this match. And I think they'll struggle the rest of the season. I'd still put Leicester City in my bottom 3 if I was choosing today. In terms of goals scored, I think both teams are going to score here. Leicester have not had a problem with scoring goals this season. 21 goals in 15 games. The 30 conceded is the big problem. For Newcastle, not great this season. 19 goals scored, but it's still over 1 per game. So take the both teams to score market at 2.63. Again, I'm really loving cautious group bets today. You know I love them anyway. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. Bundle them together. Most popular scorelines in football is a quite surprising 3.23. And again, when you've got someone scoring goals, back them and the team to win. That's Isak and Newcastle. It's only 2, but it's worth a bet.
Well, have a little bit of trust on Mr. Ruud van Nistelrooy, Tom. He is this. He's going to save Leicester City. I love your Christmas tree, by the way. I didn't notice it before. Christmas.
Yes, my wife made me do it. I don't want to do it. My wife made me. We have one here for us and one out the back for the kids. I don't want any Christmas trees, and somehow I've got 2. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, Leicester City, you see them in the bottom three. Right now, we have Southampton going directly to the Championship, and Wolverhampton and Ipswich. They are both playing at the Molineux Stadium. So this is a relegation six-pointer, both with 9 points. I guess we expected to see Ipswich in the bottom three, but not Wolves. They keep losing and losing. 3 consecutive defeats. Last one against West Ham on Monday. And Ipswich, I guess the defeat against Bournemouth was really painful, conceding 2 goals in the last 5 minutes when they were about to win. Also, they lost to Crystal Palace. So Wolverhampton to win 1.9. The draw usually is really good when we have 2 teams in the bottom 3 is 4, Tom.
Yeah, screams draw, this one, frankly. I think that you've got 2 teams here that will find ways not to win games. If you look at the last 2 matches, that's what they did. I don't think West Ham are particularly good to beat Wolves on Monday. I went to the game, but Wolves just couldn't get out their own way. Could they have had at least 1 penalty, maybe 2, potentially, but they just couldn't get going. And West Ham were obviously so nervy and they weren't great themselves, but they couldn't quite organise themselves offensively. I think that they can't kind of set the front line up as maybe Gary O'Neill would like, who remains in charge. I think they've got too many of the same player. Lamina, 𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐿 and Andre are the same guy. So no one's really offering anything different apart from, Lamina trying to headbutt his own assistant manager, and 𝐿𝐵𝐵𝐿 is going to be suspended for this one. But I just think there's too much of the same and not enough inspiration, which is what happens when the owners of a club continually sell your best players. That was always going to happen with Wolves, and I can't quite understand why it's a surprise. If you keep selling quality players, they lost Pedro Neto, they've lost Ruben Neves and João Moutinho and Raul Jimenez and God knows how many other brilliant players in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and replaced them with punts. And that can happen. Some turn out well and some turn out a bit naff. And the home record this season for Wolves, is where they're going to survive or not. That's going to be the important thing now. Win the home games, they'll make it in the Premier League. So far this season, just 1 time they've been able to pick up victory at home. 5 defeats is pitiful, and they've conceded lots of goals at home as well. 18 at home is really high. Look, you might say the Chelsea game screws their average a bit. It does, but they're still conceding consistently 1 goal per game at home. And that will cost them in the end. In terms of Ipswich Town, they have rotated here, they've rotated there, they've made a change to the lineup. They're trying to find a way to make it work in the Premier League, but these are the hard yards now. We're in the hard yards of the Premier League season for Ipswich Town. It's all about results now. And to be 1-0 up in the 86th minute at home against Bournemouth and lose that game by 2 goals to 1, that's a relegation result. That is a relegation result. Do I think they've got some good players? Yeah, I like Delap, I like Szmodic, I like Hutchinson. 1 or 2 others are worth a nod, but in general, it's a championship squad. I've said that all season. I remain of that opinion. And as much as I like Delap up front, he ain't going to score 25 goals, which you need to even have a chance if you're only going to be a 1-player team. So, look, I do think draw here, only because of the deficiencies that Wolverhampton Wanderers have got. I know Ipswich have won at Tottenham this season, but I think that was as anomalous as we thought it was at the time. Look at the Wolves win here. If you pick a winner, that's 1.91. Both teams to score, I quite like here because they both can score goals. Wolves have scored, 23 this season. Ipswich just under 1 per game, which is not amazing, but I keep thinking of them scoring in big games. They scored against Man United, they scored against Tottenham. They can score. So Wolves and both teams to score is 3.5, plus their defences, both of them, useless. Ipswich are conceding about 2 a game. Wolves are conceding 2.4 a game. It's 38 conceded, jaw-dropping number. So 5 shots on target each per team is double your money at 3. You can go more daring with that if you want, but I'll just take that as a baseline for what you can get.
Well, from the relegation battle to the European battle, 2 teams really in form and doing a great season, Nottm Forest and Aston Villa, because Aston Villa had a really bad November, as Flick would say, a shitty November, but now beat Southampton, Brentford, and even Leipzig in the Champions League, so they are in a good spot. And what to say about Nottm Forest, the biggest surprise in this Premier League, very close to the Champions League spots. Another great win this season at Old Trafford. but they have more troubles when they are playing at home. As we know, Tom, the odds are really good. The bookies expect a draw. We cannot say who is favorite according to the odds, or Forest or Aston Villa.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really tricky one, this, because it actually may well play into Nottingham Forest's hands that Aston Villa will be big favourites to win this match because they're going to have the ball more. Forest can play like the away team. Like, that is what Nottingham Forest do. They're very, very good at the tactic Nuno perfected like almost 10 years ago with Wolves. 4 at the back, 2 solid defenders, 2 fighting central midfielders, crossing to a big striker, overlapping runs. Very, very effective. Like, if you can be effective in this Premier League season, then you're going to have a really good campaign. And that's kind of what's happened, because there's a lot of teams that are going like, oh, philosophy first. Well, that's not getting a lot of teams many places. So I think there's every chance of Forest win this game. In terms of Aston Villa, a bad run of form they have had in recent weeks, and there's no way of really billing that any other way. They've had some wobbles, they've had some poor performances, they've had some injury issues, suspension issues. Watkins stopped scoring, Duran stopped scoring, creativity wasn't quite there, all of it. There's been issues there with Aston Villa, but they have seemingly turned the corner once again, which you always sort of felt they would do. Very impressive in the victory over Brentford, could have won that by more. Struggled a bit against Southampton last week, but again, it's sandwiched in between cup games and European trips and small squads. So to win that game was still impressive. They didn't hit our bet of them scoring lots of goals last week, but they did get our bet in beating Southampton. So tricky game this. Look, I think I look at the draw first and foremost at 3.3. I think there's every chance that Nottingham Forest, having not played in midweek and Villa have, will be able to low block their way to a low scoring draw. That's a draw on under 3.5 goals in the match. That's a 0-0. That's a 1-1. Can absolutely see Forest being able to do that. They're kind of on average balancing out 1-1 every game. So it's 19 scored, it's 18 conceded. So 1-1 is their kind of on average most regular scoreline. And it's worth noting for Villa as well, 23 scored but 23 conceded. So even that kind of balances out across the season. Not a great deal of draws for both, sure, but it does look to me like a draw is the most likely outcome here. The other outcome I like is 2 individual players to score in this game. If Forest are going to win, Chris Wood is going to score 10 Premier League goals this season. Outrageously good record for Chris Wood. If Villa are to win, Ollie Watkins is going to score. Both to score in this game. Forget the outcome. 7.5 for the 2 top scorers to score in this game. Wildly high. So I'd absolutely take that. If you pick a winner, I would just shade for Forest doing their Nuno thing. Forest and under 3.5 goals in the match is 3.5.
Chris Wood, 10 goals scored this season. Ollie Watkins, 7. So this is the only game without a big favorite in this match day. Let's go to our Super Sunday. 4 games on Sunday. Brighton Crystal Palace is the first one. I think you mentioned this is actually kind of a derby. They hate each other. And Brighton, of course, are the super favorites for this game. Odds are still good, around 2, very close to the European spots, even if they drop points against Leicester after leading 2-0 and lost to Fulham recently. So it's only 2 points in the last 9 out of the last 9 points. And Crystal Palace, Tom, getting points and points is 4 games without a defeat. And I guess not many people expected 2-2 against Man City.
No, they wouldn't have done. Certainly not me. And I think that's a lot about Man City, which we'll get to later in the show. But like in terms of Brighton Palace, I mean, Brighton are incredibly impressive. And one thing they do that's impressive is that every single game week when we do Brighton, I look at the team news. And this week, Webster doubtful, Hinshelwood doubtful, Milner out, Veltman doubtful, March doubtful. They have like 7 or 8 injuries every week. Like there was a table I saw this week, which was like, how many days of the season have your players cumulatively missed? And Brighton are in the top 5. But like they still continue to put out a team of players who deliver on the plan. They actually have energy and they're always running and they're always composed. And if it's not Carlos Baleba, who wasn't starting the first few weeks of the season, it's someone else doing the same job. You know, they just buy into it. They buy into what 𝗀𝗏𝗏 wants. They buy into what the club is. And a lot of players, João Pedro and Danny Welbeck, performing way above expectation. And it's just impressive. How could you not be impressed by what Brighton are able to do on the wage bill they have? 6 victories in 15, 6 draws. Should have won more than that. And as you mentioned, haven't won in the last 3, but they've also only got 1 defeat in the last 5. So, slice it how any way you like. In terms of Crystal Palace, the problems remain the same. I think they've done really well in the last couple of weeks to grind out some results. Ipswich Town is the most notable of the results they've had. 3 draws and 1 victory, but that was the win. And they had to really work hard to get that, really work hard. Late equaliser against Newcastle in a dreadful game. Did well to get something at Aston Villa. They are not a team that are going to go down. They are not a team that are going to sleepwalk into relegation. They're trying to find a way to play. And they're missing some inspiration. They're missing some creativity. If 𝐬𝐻𝐴 doesn't do it, and he's still only been able to play about 60, 65 minutes, there isn't really anyone else who can sort of play that way. I'm missing Wharton, missing 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀. They come in, they get injured again. They come in, they get injured again. I think 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀's fit at the moment, but Wharton might be out. Those are issues with Crystal Palace. It's not a big squad. 2 or 3 players missing is really, really significant. And I also think it's worth noting that Marc Guéhi and 𝐿𝐿𝐴, the quiet centre-half, and whoever else the third guy is in that back 3, started the season poorly. 𝐿𝐴's got a lot better. Guéhi's got a lot better. And I think that's improved Crystal Palace across the campaign. How does the game go in this weird derby, which I can't be bothered to explain now, but it is sort of a derby? I'd go Brighton win. 1.91 as my first bet. I'd still fancy Brighton to pick up victory here. I also think I'd look at the both teams to score market as well, looking at recent results where that has happened regularly. Brighton 25 and 22. That's goals conceded, goals scored. 2-2 draw against Leicester. 3-1 at Fulham. 1-1 against Southampton. Last 5 games are all both teams to score scenarios. And for Crystal Palace, that's been the same for 3 of the last 4. The only one was the game against Ipswich, where Ipswich couldn't score. So look at both teams to score. Pick for your winner. I'd go for Brighton. That's 3.5, which is quite high. And also both teams to score an over 3.5 goals in the match is a double your money bet. Again, both teams are scoring at the moment. I know the Palace average is under, but they are scoring recently. And it's a derby. When these sort of derby games happen, and it is a derby to the fans involved, which will give us a derby atmosphere, you tend to get a bit of a slobber knocker, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 1-1, 2-2, 3-3 here. So look at the goals market, but shade for Brighton.
Well, talking about derbies, Tom, Manchester derby, the best game in this match day. Remember that Man United were able to beat Man City in the FA Cup last season, but in the Premier League, Man City won both games, and they are both in trouble. They are both in bad form, no matter if Rubén Amorim arrived to Old Trafford, back-to-back defeats for them against Forest and Arsenal. They are 13th in the standings. And what to say about Man City? Pep Guardiola, very nervous. It's only 1 win in the last 9 games against Nottingham Forest. Another defeat against Juventus in the Champions League. So, Tom, where to go? I never touch Man United, so I guess we should go for Man City, but still, they keep surprising me. Losing and losing, I thought I would never see a Pep Guardiola team so bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, losing Rodri has been bigger than any of us thought it was going to be. We all thought it was going to be significant. We didn't realise he was the only load-bearing wall in the team, and him missing has been dramatic. I mean, he's barely missed the game for the best part of 3 years. And if you've got someone like that, I suppose it's right you build the team around him. But they haven't sort of planned for his absence in a way. And they could have bought Declan Rice a couple of years ago, and they didn't do it. There's 1 or 2 other kind of holding midfielders they could have gone for. They didn't do it. And that leads us to where we are now. They've tried Rico Lewis. He's suspended for this game. John Stones continues to be out. Manuel Akanji's played there. He is unlikely to be fit for this one. Nathan Ake has played there, I think, but he's unlikely to play in this game. Mateo Kovacic has been struggling with injury. So who they play there is question 1, and then how they play is question 2. And they haven't been able to get to question 2 because everyone's been injured when they've asked question 1 so far. So that's where we are at the moment with Manchester City. I think the fact that Haaland has stopped scoring almost completely is really interesting as well. I think it's like 1 in 6 or 1 in 7, something like that. They've relied on him so much to score in every single game that him drying up has been significant. I think 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵𝗏𝗏𝗀 is their 2nd top scorer this season, and he's been dropped the last couple of games for some poor performances. So that's been a significant issue there. So look, the lineup's going to be really interesting. No one at City is having a particularly spectacular season. I'm sure they'll come good second half of the campaign. For anyone who wants anyone else to win the Premier League, we can only hope they're 10 points behind with 10 games to go before they go on that inevitable 10 wins in a row run. And Kevin De Bruyne coming back has made a difference. You know, he is still at his age the best player in Man City, maybe the best player in the league, but clearly the legs are going. Clearly he's looking out of shape because he's not played a great deal of football, and that will take time for Man City to start getting right. In terms of Manchester United, only Luke Shaw, really significant injury going into this game. And last week in the loss against Forest, you know, we predicted goals last week, but I did think City, United, forgive me, would shade it. In the end, it was Forest. But what surprised me was, firstly, he's gone straight in with this formation that he wants to play, 3-4-3. Does he have the players for it? He does not. And yet he's sort of doing just open training at the moment, Ruben Amorim, which is really surprising because, you know, you come into Man United, the last guy got sacked because he couldn't get the results. The new guy's come in and he's going to get 4 months of open training sessions to try stuff out. That's really interesting. Only Amad Diallo seems to be thriving in the new formation. He's not gaining a start every single game. Bruno Fernandes, to be fair, was probably the best player on the pitch last week, but got taken off. You know, I didn't really get that. Bruno Fernandes getting taken off for, I can't remember who it was, maybe Anthony, someone useless. But like, Bruno Fernandes was the only person that was starting the play, scored a goal to get him back in the game, was delivering in this sort of like underlapping run through the centre kind of style, which led to the 𝐬𝐿𝐴 goal. And he took him off and it was like, okay, he's the world-class player. Everyone else is either good or fine. So that might have been a lesson for Ruben Amorim. You don't take your best players off. You shouldn't ever take your best players off unless they're injured. And he did, and that cost them. Don't know who's going to play up front. Don't think much of 𝐬𝐿𝐴. 𝗀𝗏𝐿 has really struggled in this league. Neither of them are particularly top quality. 𝐻𝐿𝐴 continues to be all hairstyle and no consistency. Marcus Rashford's got no business being in the Premier League in this current form. It just needs a new club. Has needed a new club for a long time to reinvigorate him. So tough, this really, really tough. Look, I'm not going to bet on Man United for the reason that you said when you come to me. You simply can't bet on Man United right now. 6 defeats in their 15 games, 5 victories, 4 draws, averaging 19 goals and conceding 18. They are incredibly average. And Man City, even at their worst, and they have been on a bad run. I know they lost in midweek in the Champions League, but it does sort of feel like they've turned the corner a bit with Kevin De Bruyne being back and Haaland scoring again. So Man City win at 1.53, which is quite high for Man City. I would take that. 2 group bets I like here as well that will make you some decent money. The 3 most common scorelines in football, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. 3.5 for that to go City's way at home. Really surprising. And go more extravagant if you like. 3-0, 3-1 or 3-2. Cover the possibility of a United goal. Brings you at 5. And I'm enjoying this at the moment as well. I've been betting on shots on target in games because on average teams are getting 4 or 5. But suddenly I'm noticing there's a real pattern of lots of shots on target. City, 9 shots on target in this game. Onana will need to make saves is the first double your money line for shots on target. So 9 shots on target is 3. If you're more brave, looking at 11, looking at 12, there's every chance you make some good money on that.
Well, Man United is still average with the new manager, the 3rd of the season, and now they destroyed even Sporting Lisbon. They are unable to win a football game. They keep destroying teams, getting players, mostly useless players for the Premier League. And Garnacho is very important also to take care of your hairstyle. Very important. And now just try to learn how to play football as Chelsea are doing right now. This is another derby in West London, Chelsea-Brentford. I guess we should expect goals and goals, even if we check our Premier League page in Oddspedia. We have betting stats and we have a fire next to Brentford and Chelsea because these teams are really good at both teams to score. 13 out of 15 for Brentford, 11 out of 15 for Chelsea. Great season, great manager, 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵. But since Brentford are playing away, Tom, looks kind of a safe bet, Chelsea to win and both teams to score, I would say.
Yeah, look, I mean, the Brentford piece of this is why I would be so confident in a Chelsea victory because away from home, it's 7 games, it's 1 draw, it's 6 defeats. It's inexplicable how you can be as good as they are at home. And they're not just good at home, they're the best team in the country at home. And so unbearably average away from home. It's something Thomas Frank, I'm sure, is mulling over every training session. He's speaking about with every interview he does. Like, why does this keep happening to us? But in terms of Chelsea, I mean, the squad is enormous and there's enormous quality. And what happens over the next couple of years with them in terms of how have you done this and is it within the rules is probably going to be the overbearing narrative that we're going to be talking about a lot editorially in football, especially if they become Premier League champions. They'll be talking about how have they balanced the budget? How is this within the rules? Where has the money come from? Because to be able to have a bench that costs what it costs, the wages they pay to the players that sit on the bench, got to be question marks here, because you look at the Tottenham game last week and Tottenham are like, right, scrambling around for the third sub, whereas Chelsea can be like, should we bring on like 𝐬𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐼? And like, you know, we'll say what you like about the quality of the guy. Some like him, some don't. He ain't cheap and he can be their fifth kind of sub. Mykhailo Mudryk, for example, barely plays. He was an £80 million signing. I'm sure the money is decent in terms of wages too. So we'll see how that goes. But on the field, you know, sublime. Recently, 4 victories in a row. Cole Palmer in scintillating form. Nicholas Jackson, who didn't score for us last week, but was incredibly influential. 𝐼SAIDO going to right back and then inverting into midfield to give you Lavia, Enzo and 𝐼SAIDO on the field at the same time. Really clever. It's got something out of Enzo Fernandez as well, who'd really struggled in England the entire time he'd been here until about 3 weeks ago. Having that extra body in there has helped Enzo Fernandez because he can't really run. And so you need someone else to do his running. 𝐼SAIDO does his running, coming in from right back. And that means you've got something more out of Enzo Fernandez, including a great goal last week, which is really impressive. 35 goals scored in 15 games is wild. Top scorers in the Premier League. And look at this run here. 4 against Tottenham, 5 against Southampton, 3 against Aston Villa in the last 3 games. That's as many in 3 games as some teams have scored all season. So you got to look at Chelsea to win here, and Chelsea to win with goals scored as well. I absolutely love both teams to score, and I quite like that. I look at Chelsea to score at least 3 goals in this game as well, going on the recent run. So Chelsea win 1.33. Chelsea win with 3 goals scored. Jackson to score and Chelsea to win is 2.38. Palmer to score and Chelsea to win is 2.2. One of those happens every week. So in general, just pick one. And I also like Chelsea to win both halves here as well, because they start strong and end strong at the moment. There is nothing I can say that's particularly negative about Chelsea. Go Chelsea, go win, go goals, especially with Brentford being the second worst team away from home in the Premier League this season. It's a banker.
How life has changed for good for Chelsea this season. They are a superb team and looking forward to seeing them next season in the Champions League. And on Sunday, we also have Southampton Tottenham's Russian roulette. Let's see where it stops. In St. Mary's, they are doing a really poor season, I would say. I don't know if 𝗵 Postecoglou is in risk. 19 goals conceded this season, lost to Chelsea and to Bournemouth. It's only 1 win in the last 5 Premier League games, and that win was against Man City. I guess they should bounce back against the worst team in the league, Tom.
They should. My only concern here is that this is the sort of game that Tottenham have lost forever. Like, normally going into this game, they've won a big game and then they go on to lose against Southampton. They've already lost this season to Crystal Palace and Ipswich Town. But I wonder if there'll be extra focus on this for Spurs because of the recent run. Like, it's, as you mentioned, 3 defeats in 5, 1 victory in that time. That was against City. Postecoglou is under pressure, no doubt about it. Like, to have scored 31 goals this season in 15 games, 2 goals on average per game, is really impressive. But 7 defeats tells you something's wrong. And you saw it a bit in the Chelsea game last week. Look, injuries again were a problem. To lose Romero, to lose Van de Ven, having just come back, was a massive concern. Because then Ben Davies is out as well. And if you haven't got your best players, you don't win the big games. I mean, you can plan as much as you want. If you've got a second string squad, you ain't going to win games like the Chelsea game last week. But you could argue, did he try and shut the game down? Did they go 5 or 6 at the back? Did they change the tactics at half-time when the injury hit Romero to play differently? They didn't. I don't know whether that's the right thing to do, but I do know Postecoglou's getting some grief for it. But look, listen to this. These are the players that are out or could be out of this game. Bentancur, we know, suspended. Bissouma is suspended. Davis is a doubt for this game. Johnson is a doubt. Romero likely out. Vicario is out. Van der Ven is out. Richarlison is out. Huge list of players there, including the first choice backline, the first choice goalkeeper. That's going to be a real headache for 𝗵𝗶𝗀 in this match. And look, Southampton, are they going to go down? Yes, they are. Should they sack Russell Martin? For me personally, no, because I don't think Merlin could find a way. That's a wizard. Could find a way to get this squad up. It just ain't going to happen. They have not built a Premier League squad. They have not got a Premier League defence. And they brought in Aaron Ramsdale to be number one, broke his finger. And so Joe Lumley's had to play, who's not a Premier League goalkeeper. So they've not even got the Premier League goalkeeper now. And I think Gavin Bazunu is the number two, but he's been missing all season. Jack Stevens suspended for this one for the hair pull on 𝐿𝐿. Onuachu out, Bednarek out. Look, it's not a Premier League squad with a load of injuries and suspensions. What are you going to do? Beyond Dibbling, they've got no one really that's particularly caught the eye. So look, go Tottenham win here, even though they do find ways to lose this game. 1.7 is not great. It might be worth a punt on Southampton victory. I know it's only 1 win in 15 and 12 defeats, but only because of the Spursiness of it all. You wouldn't be surprised to see them do it. So if you feel crazy, do it. I'm not gonna, but you can. I'm just letting you know what the odds are. I do think both teams to score here. I know 11 goals for Saints ain't great, but they have scored against good teams this season. Like they scored in the loss against Arsenal. They scored one against Chelsea. They scored against Liverpool. They can score goals, and they have scored goals against good teams. So I'd put them to score in this game, but Spurs win 2.5, and 3-0, 3-1, 3-2 Tottenham is 5. I do think there'll be goals in this game, but shade for Spurs.
Is it Tottenham a good team?
They're a big name. They're a big name.
A big club with a great stadium. We have
the eighth biggest club in the country, I'd say.
All right. Well, and for Monday, we have Bournemouth, West Ham. 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗀 is still with a job because they beat Wolverhampton on Monday after defeats against Leicester and Arsenal. And now the relegation is really far, 9 points away. But Bournemouth, of course, they are favorites for this game in great form. 3 consecutive wins for them, Ipswich, Spurs, and Wolverhampton, Tom.
Yeah, look, Bournemouth have been terrific this season, and I think that they continue to overperform the quality of the squad. What they have as well is an incredibly hard-working front line. You know, if you are going to press high in terms of a high line, you've also got to be high intensity, which they are with 𝐿𝐵𝗿𝗄 and 𝐸menyo and Ouattara when he comes on, and obviously Evan Nielsen, the midfield pairing, whatever it ends up being. Potentially Tyler Adams if he's fit. I know he's a doubt for this one. He always is a doubt. And like Christie or Cook or whatever it ends up being, the intensity of Bournemouth is the reason they have done so well. And in games where they haven't quite hit that mark, they have lost. Thinking about Brentford, thinking about Brighton. Somehow Brighton were more intense than Bournemouth in that brilliant game a few weeks ago. Even down to 10, Brighton held on. But from that point, they've gone on to win 3 in a row. They've got goals in them. They're at home here. I'd expect them to win reasonably comfortably. In terms of West Ham, like I went on Monday, I can't do too much more on 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗀. I've done a lot of it this week, but like he is the wrong fit. He is a bad manager. He has struggled. He's 1,000 bad ideas a day, 𝗀𝗻𝗄𝗏. And even last week, like, were they good enough to beat Wolves? Maybe just about, but they could have conceded 2 penalties in that game, at least probably 1. And without Jarrod Bowen, who for me, I've said this to you before, I think there's Salah, I think there's Saka, and there's Bowen in that position. You don't move Salah from right wing. You don't move Saka from right wing. You don't move Bowen from right wing if you're 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗀. And he's played him centre forward because Antonio, of course, broke his leg in that car crash. Nicholas Füllkrug, I think, is made of twigs, so he can't play football. And so he moved Bowen. Don't move Bowen. They moved Bowen back to the right against Wolves and he killed them because he's one of the best players in the league in that position. Don't do it. So he's got to find a front three. Got to start playing Füllkrug. I'm sorry, start playing him. I don't care now. Play him. If you can't cut the Premier League, then sell him in January. We're 4 games till January. Let's find out if he can do it. He's fit. He scored a late consolation against Leicester. Didn't even come on for like 5 minutes against Wolves on Monday. Maybe 𝗵𝗶𝗍𝗀 hates him. Maybe he never wanted to sign him. I don't know. Frankly, I don't care. He's got to play up front in this game with Bowen and another. Personally, I'd play Somerville because all Mohamed Kudus is doing is running down blind alleys and giving the ball away. Don't play Paqueta because he is completely shot as a footballer. The midfield three of Soler, Soucek and Alvarez sort of works. But then don't drop Alvarez off wildly deep to mark Evan Nielsen because it leaves you a massive gap in midfield. I mean, he's going to do all this stuff. So I'm telling him not to do it. He's going to do it because he's stupid. And what do you do about the back line? Todibo's rubbish. So he's going to play Mavropanos, which means Bournemouth are going to score at least one goal because Mavropanos is like a kamikaze player. Emerson suspended here as well, which is worth noting. So Aaron Cresswell is going to have to play. Good luck with that. Look, Bournemouth win 1.7. Take it, absolutely. Bournemouth win and both teams to score. I'd take that as well. Bournemouth have scored 23 goals this season. West Ham on 20. So they're averaging over 1.5 goal a game. I do think both teams will score here. And the only player I'd pick out here is 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗀, who, if anyone scores for West Ham, it's going to be him. And I was surprised to see him anytime goal scorer at 3.75. So I do think Bournemouth will win, but find a way to punt on Bowen.
All right. Well, 𝗀𝗲𝗿𝗀 will be in the UK for Christmas. Lucky you, Tom Rennie. Let's listen to your safe bet. Remember, of course, that we still have our tipster competitions, including the Premier League one. And also now Rivals, where you can create your own tipster competition and play with your friends. Tom, let's go with your safe bet.
Safe bet is Arsenal to win against Everton. Big favourites to beat the Toffees this weekend. I think they will. 1.22 for an Arsenal win against Everton.
And the mighty ACCA?
Lots of favourites this week, and so it wasn't easy to find an ACCA that was worthwhile. There's a couple of doubles that bring you in at 2.2. There's a couple of trebles that bring you in at 3. But if you go for a quadruple here, which is unlikely, but I like this, Arsenal victory against Everton, big favourites. Liverpool victory against Fulham, big favourites. Chelsea to win at home against Brentford, big favourites. If you throw Tottenham in there as well, I know, but if you throw them in too, it comes in at 3.56. Everything else I can find is not worth it. So this, it's daring, but at 3.56, that's worth a fiver.
It's risky. A lot of favourites this match day. Only one game without favourites. Let's see what happens. Tom Rennie, it's been a pleasure. See you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.